Presented and produced by the National Public Housing Museum, this is Out of the Archives, an oral history podcast created from interviews with public housing residents from across the United States. I'm your host for this episode, Mark Jeschke. A few quick words before we get started. This episode discusses themes of death and dying, drug use, state-led displacement, and houselessness. Please take care while listening. What makes a neighborhood worth loving and fighting for? For some of us here in Chicago, it's the familiar smell of Maxwell Street hot dogs or Harold's chicken. It might be nearby access to affordable grocery stores, movie theaters, or the lake. For others, it is the unsung neighborhood heroes, the candy ladies, the person organizing cleaning days, or the neighbors who watch the kids after school before the workday ends. You can hear about some of these neighborhood heroes in nearly every episode of Out of the Archives, including Episode 1 featuring stories of neighborhood entrepreneurs, or Episode 20 telling the story of Mr. Farley, aka Mr. Fix-It. In our last episode, we heard from Janetta Pegues and Alan Schwartz, neighbors across time. Despite living at the Jane Addams in different eras, they were connected through their memories of how the place held the people. In their recollections of the community, they described different generations of the struggle to maintain Abla and the surrounding Little Italy community from gentrification and other urban development that did not focus on the needs of the people. These struggles and actions of the past continue to shape the country and even the world today. Yet, many of the neighborhood heroes who nurtured and fought for their communities get lost from mainstream accounts of that history. A neighborhood hero we honor in the name and curriculum of our oral history training programs is Ms. Beauty Turner, a decades-long resident of the Robert Taylor homes who fought similar displacement forces on the south side of Chicago.
Beauty Turner was an advocate and an activist for public housing, as well as she was a journalist. She chronicled different things that were going on in the community, different incidents that would take place. Beauty was there with her camera, taking pictures, getting the word from the people that were involved and the people that were in the community. And one of the things that Beauty Turner is most known for is the ghetto bus tours, which became known as Beauty's Ghetto Bus Tour, as well as she was the founder of the Ghetto Gallery. And ghetto is an acronym. So let me break it down to you. Ghetto is the acronym for the greatest history ever told to ours. All right, so Beauty, being a journalist and an advocate and an activist, was a proponent of the community having the opportunity to tell our own story. Many times people from outside of the community get the opportunity to write our stories for us, write our history for us.
This last clip was Nuri Medina II, host of the Inglewood Enterprise Gallery community-based TV show, reflecting in 2017 on the work and legacy of Ms. Beauty Turner. Her humanizing spirit was the heart of Miss Beauty's work, and through it, she drew a map illustrating how to venerate, care for, and love a neighborhood and its people. In fact, for Miss Beauty, you could not separate a neighborhood and its people. They were synonymous with each other. In this episode of Out of the Archives, Beauty is Remembered, a mother's fight for public housing, we highlight selections from our interviews with Larry Turner, the eldest son of Ms. Beauty Turner. Unpacking how her practice of love fueled her advocacy and writing, Larry's reflections underscore why Ms. Beauty is an important figure in the history of public housing and in our museum. As a Robert Taylor resident from 1989 to 2002, up until the day her building was demolished, Ms. Beauty's work was further propelled by the realities of disinvestment, demolition, privatization, and displacement. Hear her describe it in this 2007 excerpt from her ghetto bus tour.
So I brought you to this open field because I want you to keep an open mind concerning the residents of public housing. I want you to look around. This is once where 12 28 public housing high-rises stood in the Robert Taylor area, 16 stories high. Tens of thousands of low-income people used to dwell here.
With this $1.6 billion CHA transformation plan, with the relocating of low-income residents, people need to actually see, as those buildings come down, where the people are going to, what's happening with them, what's the morale of the people. This tour actually shows those things. Plus, at the end of the day, when I take you to the ghetto gallery, you get to see some of the pictures of what it was like there, what happened there, the different events, the playing of the children playing basketball and jumping rope. It was just like a normal community. It was a community.
Ms. Beauty always brought her message, whether written or spoken, back to that word, community. Larry describes other foundational lessons that his mother centered.
My early memories of my mother about her being a black lady was discipline. She played no games. She would make you do what was necessary even if you didn't understand her purpose of doing it. She taught you how to utilize your mind to its fullest capabilities. She taught me that my mind is a sponge. It can absorb whatever you put in front of it. And she taught me just basically believe in yourself. No matter what your income level was, she taught you to stand up and really go for what you believe in and believe that God will make a way. So from that point, she also taught me there's a time for everything. It's a time to play. It's a time to be serious. It's a time to understand where you're coming from. And it's a time to be attentive and pay attention to your environments. Because anybody who really came from Robert Taylor or anywhere in that district know at any given time, violence could show its ugly head. She pushed education because she knew where we was at. Education was a precious thing. Most people didn't necessarily graduate because they was probably dead before 21, or they was either in situations that they didn't want to be a part of, or they was a part of the dope game. Because our building had a serious infatuation with dope, drugs, heroin, you name it. These was the conditions in which black men pretty much stood around and tried to make money, because at that point, nobody was getting jobs. Everybody in the building was pretty much limited in their income as far as Section 8, public housing, or you was either limited to food stamps, your daily check, or either child support.
The Robert Taylor Homes was once the largest public housing development in the country, with 4,415 units and over 27,000 residents at the height of its occupancy. It has a reputation for violence that is well known throughout Chicago and beyond. However, it didn't start this way. Our next two narrators describe the Robert Taylor Homes in its early years. Patricia Porter, from 1962 to 1967, and Betty Thompson, from 1963 to 1972.
Well, our building, which was 4410, we were the first family on that floor. It was a brand new building. The rooms and stuff were nice, and everything was brand new then. So it was a experience to be able to have a nice apartment, since we did come from down south, and coming into a nice clean place, and there was no problems with, as of today, they have rats and roaches and fallen plaster and stuff like that. When we first went, it was a brand new building and everything was nice. The only thing about it, the heat came from the floors. It would be so hot. That was a problem with the temperature in the building. But the neighborhood was nice and the people were nice. And we was like, it's a whole big family.
In Robert Taylor, by me being 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, at this time growing up, you had the Vietnam War going, which was, I think, 72, something like that. We always had camaraderie, we always had togetherness, and we always had softball teams, football teams, baseball teams. You had pom-poms, we had cheerleaders. Robert Taylor was good. The project was good. It was a community. It was a place to grow. And you was aware that you were growing. From Robert Taylor, you knew, like, we would clean up the gallery, because we had gallery style before they put that big old grid up there. We had gallery style, so we washed the steps and the gallery down once a week. Everybody literally came out. Every week we would come together, and we would do it on a Sunday after church, because you got to go to church and you had to go to Sunday school. And then maybe you would go to the movies, but even if you went to the movies, you had to do the gallery. So we would do the galleries, and it would start from the 16th floor on down. That water would actually come down and it would go down on the side. And once it went down on the side, it went to the grass. But we had grass. We had flowers. And that was in 44, 44, 48, 47, 48, 48, 49, 46, 49, 47, and 49, 50. All 6 buildings. So when we get through cleaning up, we could come outside and play. If we didn't go to the movies. If we went to the movies, it was nice and clean when we went out and when we came back. So it showed me how, as a community, you can make it happen, you can make it grow. But then you have to be responsible too. Whatever it was that you were supposed to do, your responsibility you learned. So that's how I knew that I was growing, because my responsibilities started changing.
Miss Betty left the Robert Taylor homes in 1972. This was on the cusp of nationwide political currents that would deal devastating damage to public housing. The Vietnam War, impending privatization of public services, and President Richard Nixon's racist quote-unquote war on drugs set the stage for demonization and defunding of public housing. For those unfamiliar with the quote, war on drugs, this refers to a host of national and international policies and law enforcement implementation started in the 1970s by President Richard Nixon. In the words of Senior Assistant John Ehrlichman, we knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. This podcast uses the term war on drugs not to reinforce its legitimacy or ideology, but to reference this layered history and ongoing policy agenda in its totality, particularly its impact on Black and low-income communities. Listen to our next narrator, Dr. Richard Morgan, describing his experiences in the 1970s and 1980s as the war on drugs rippled through his community.
So I stayed in Robert Taylor from, 67 until 1989. And it didn't start getting bad until, I want to say, maybe in the 80s, something like that. I left, but I didn't leave. I got married and left, but I continued to work at the Park District in Robert Taylor. I continued to work at the schools in the neighborhood. So I still was there. I guess once you became an older teen to a young adult, you began to recognize the treatment that wasn't the same. You began to realize that, we stacked on top of each other. I think that started when they started putting the gates up, or like we were caged in. A lot of that began around that time. Then you begin to realize, hey, what's going on? Why we got to be caged up? Why we got to be all on top of each other? Then, if you had plumbing issues, did those get turned around in a good amount of time? And a lot of times they didn't. You had to become a plumber yourself, learn how to do some things yourself. And then in the wintertime, if the heat wasn't up, as high as it should be, or when it should be, you lit the stove and stuff like that. Many of the people I grew up with, and many of the people that, we grew to be family and loved one another, those people still meet down there when it starts getting warm on Sundays and things like that. They still meet. It's called Old School Sunday. They would still meet down there because it meant so much to them. Till they still gravitate to it and sit around and cook barbecue and ribs and hot dogs and burgers. They still do that to this day. I think that once they began to add the policy, I think it was a policy where it was like, um, you know, any man that was in the house or anything like that couldn't be there on the lease or anything like that unless you guys were married and stuff like that. And I'll just say our race was such that back in the day, it was like common law type marriages way back in the olden days. But so those type things kind of like tore families apart. I mean, I understood, but it sort of tore some of the families apart. And then when you started, like I said, they caged up the building. All those things, even though they might have been done for good reason, caused bad things to happen because people's attitudes changed when you started seeing those type things.
In addition to the policy changes that Morgan describes, the 1970s and 80s saw massive defunding of public housing by Presidents Nixon and Reagan. In 1973, Nixon placed an 18-month moratorium, or an official pause, on funding for all forms of subsidized housing. A year later, the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 established the framework for housing voucher programs, also known as Section 8. These neoliberal policies, allowing private companies to take over public services and thereby profit from them, meant that funding was increasingly funneled out of the traditional public housing and into programs like Section 8. These changes in governmental policy and funding meant that those still living in traditional public housing, such as the Robert Taylor homes, faced increasing disinvestment, disrepair, and neglect. The harsh media portrayals of public housing and the U.S. government's role in funneling drugs into poor communities further stigmatized and stressed public housing communities.
It was extremely cold November 1989, and we walked and carried our stuff all the way to 53rd in the cold. My brother and my little sister, who was at the time was about 5 and 6, and my older brother was about 9, and my other brother was 8. So we little kids carrying our stuff, just our mother, and walking through these buildings or walking down this something we call the foul lane, where you can walk from building to building that's down this stretch. And it's dark and you're seeing shadows walking past where ain't no lights on these porches. You wonder who these figures, something you can just see is their eyeballs staring at you as you walk through, and you stepping on glass and Pampers that have been used. And as soon as you get towards the elevator way, the breeze of, I don't know, smell just, I believe, whatever hairs I had in my nose at that young age just dissolved them, right? It was disgusting. Standing by the elevator, no one told us that they were broken. We had to walk all the way up 10 flights with all of our stuff, and I was carrying pants and a few jeans and socks that I owned. I had to carry all that stuff upstairs. Living in the projects caused you to have to consider more as a kid than you otherwise would when it comes down to danger, right? Come down to fears, come down to racism, come down to classism. And some of those people who are your neighbors got to step in when either your mom or whoever's personally responsible for you lack, because they are not Superwoman or Superman in no respect. So community, you know what I mean, has to um, feel obligated to have to step in order to qualify as a community, right? And I believe that the people that became our neighbors, right, stepped up so much so that I can see how it has helped shaped my identity as a Black man, right? Because it was mostly these Black women, single mothers, you know what I mean? They got these building captains, right? They had these choke room where they served breakfast and lunch to these kids, right? They organized around aldermen, you know what I mean, to be elected. All of this is going on within the building, and you can go next door and you can borrow sugar and ketchup and eggs and milk. You know what I mean? And then they send you to the store with the food stamps, and they say you get a bag of potato chips to bring by 75 cents back. So it was all a sense of community from most of these Black women that I guess took hold of me, and I guess the men as well. The displacement has exacerbated, right, to a degree that I would argue is intentional genocide or structural genocide.
That last narrator you heard is Troy Gaston, who lived in the Robert Taylor homes between 1989 and 1999, and is also a member of our oral history collective. Patricia Porter, Betty Thompson, Richard Morgan, and Troy are each patches of a quilt illustrating the story of the Robert Taylor homes. Robert Taylor was part of a larger community of housing projects called the State Street Corridor, the longest continuous stretch of public housing. The corridor was also the site of Ms. Beauty's ghetto bus tours. From 22nd to 54th, the Raymond Hilliard homes, Harold Ickes homes, Dearborn homes, Stateway Gardens, and the Robert Taylor homes ran along State Street, parallel to the highway. Today, only the Dearborn homes and the Hilliard homes are still standing. The rest of the public housing complexes that made up the State Street Corridor were demolished in the city's turn-of-the-century plan for transformation, a policy that we described last episode for its impact on the residents of the Jane Addams homes. While the program claimed to be in service of revitalizing public housing conditions, it involved the forcible displacement of tens of thousands of residents and the demolition of over 17,000 units of housing. With the CHA firmly focused on a mixed income approach moving forward, it has renovated and rebuilt only a fraction of the 25,000 units it's promised, as reported by ProPublica in 2022. And, according to the Chicago Housing Authority's fiscal year 2023 report, close to 200,000 families are on the CHA's public housing waiting lists. The wait time is not clearly defined, estimated to be anywhere from 6 months to 25 years, depending on the applicant's needs. During the wait for housing assistance, many families live in unstable, crowded, or unsuitable housing, while others are unhoused. According to the City of Chicago's 2024 point-in-time count, 72% of people who are experiencing homelessness and are classified as non-new arrivals, people who have lived in the U.S. for at least a year and a half, identify as non-Latinx Black.
My mom's mission, I read sometime later in some of her paperwork, because I still have a lot of it. She read the reason that she initially started this was to never be homeless, to never feel homelessness around her, because she saw the results of what homelessness did to people. It broke them down. It made them feel like they was less than human beings and struggling to get a better way. Because I think the only way to truly understand something is for you to briefly go through it and see what these people are encountering. She did that. Often I didn't understand the mission, but I actually see towards the tail end, after she'd been gone for almost 15 years, of what her mission really was. To actually bring people together, give them unity, make them have some dignity, humanity, and self-respect, and fight for things that matter to them. Because the smallest of things matter to people, and we don't even realize it. My mom started out, she was just an individual who really wanted to try to make a difference, but she wasn't quite sure of her confidence level at the certain point when she started. She was like into writing poetry. She would write beautiful words, and she would with words of encouragement, try to be there for people. And she would pretty often write the stuff, like do a little list of what she wanted to write, and she would ball it up. I would go over to it and I would be nosy, as most kids often are, pick it up and see what she had going on her paperwork, just reading, and I would read these beautiful words, and she didn't feel as if they was worthy for the public yet. I would secretly take her paperwork that she had and send it out to the newspaper, and they actually would love her work. So she pretty much started getting people inquiring, calling. She would think it was a joke, and they really wanted to hear from her. So when she would take her paperwork and go from there, and they started calling her and talking to her, she saw a need for people to be able to fight for their rights and have a voice, because she used to call herself the voice of the voiceless. I used to think it was like profound, because I'm like, how can somebody who don't speak up for themselves have a voice? She said, that's why I step in. I speak for those who want to speak and say the things that they wish that they could say. So she was actually a beautiful person in that way. So if I really think about what all she did for the people, she gave them an opportunity to stand up for themselves. I think when my mom started, she was just trying to give the ghetto deeper meaning than what it was. She wanted it to be positive. She wanted it to be something unique, and she wanted it to be something profound. Because most people think a ghetto is deprived, not having anything. She wanted to bring back the hope to the people. She wanted to show them something different, but then she also didn't want to forget where she was coming from. She wanted to actually utilize something that would be so profound and so negative to make a real difference. So that's how she came up with it. She got tired of hearing the stereotypes. She got tired of the negativity. She got tired of people just looking down on her home. It's like anywhere you live in the city, nobody want to be looked down on. You know, I'm a South Sider, and we often laugh and joke and different stuff about the West, but somebody from the West Side will take offense to that, and they say, you ain't going to talk about my home. You ain't going to do the 290 like that. That's how she felt about the ghetto. So it's all about respect. That's what she wanted, to give them some dignity and respect. Remember my thing I had said, the voice of the voiceless? She wanted to give them a voice. Even with our 60609 zip code that we lived in, you could go maybe 15, 20 minutes up the street, you downtown. They're living the life and they're loving it. Or you can go to the lakefront, they filling up their boats. They putting thousands of dollars in there for just fuel. I used to scratch my head and wonder, how can an individual put $1,000 worth of fuel in their boat when there's people barely eating? Whole buildings of people struggling to be able to make it. My mom, when she first started her ghetto bus tours, she started an experiment. She wanted to see what people actually pay to see what the experience of the residents would go through. Because at the beginning, she didn't necessarily put it out to scholars. She just wanted to see would people be willing and interested in the life experience of people going through these developments. So she rented a bus. Bus cost more than she made as far as the tour, but she still did it. She put it together, put all these people on the bus, originally charged them $10, took them around to the different people, talked to a lot of her friends, and networked a lot of things to really give you an experience, but something slightly different from what the news was showing. Because the news was depicting it of a negative place, hardship, barely coming together. She wanted to show you that if you actually reached out to the people and actually saw where their heart's at, that they would care and give you something different. She put it together because she felt like it was a need for it. And that all went back to not wanting to be homeless, not showing their experience of what people went through, and actually try to show you a different understanding of the people of this development. That's why she started.
How was it living in the village for me? I learned how to not be so selfish. You know, it taught me a lot of things. It taught me to love my neighbors for real. It taught me to love people. It taught me when I don't have anything and my next door neighbor had it, I could get it from her. Or if I had everything and she didn't have anything, I can give it to her. It has nothing to do with a plan for transformation. It's a plan for elimination, and it's eliminating the poor. If we don't protest, if we don't stand up for what we believe in, you're going to have a lot of homeless people. And they're all going to be on the outskirts, and the city going to be a gated city, just like in France and in China. But this is not just only affecting the poor. Guess who else is affected? The middle income. Guess why it's affecting the middle income? Because if all the children is being moved out, do you need 100 teachers in a school, a charter school, a privatized school that's only bringing 30 children back?
What's a scenario or situation that could happen to our kids?
You have a lot of children that's not going to be able to come to your school because they're going to lose their Section 8 vouchers. And they're going to constantly keep moving. Constantly.
The clip you just heard was Ms. Beauty Turner talking to the Inglewood-based students of Flavian Prince, all of whom worked together to create a documentary in 2008-2009 called Interrupt the Pipeline. Prince also worked in a school in Champaign, Illinois, about 2 hours south of the city, and noticed how many of his students' families had relocated from Chicago public housing with Section 8 housing choice vouchers. He further witnessed many of his Champaign students being sent to prison for the smallest infractions, sometimes by other educators. This compelled him to learn from and with his students about how the school-to-prison pipeline was impacted by Chicago housing policies and development trends. Troy also keenly analyzes the devastating impacts of demolition and displacement.
Crime rates and murder rates skyrocketed since the demolishment of the Robert Potato Project. And despite the fact it was done under the pretense of revitalization, it was aware that they didn't have 17,000 housing available for the families that they kicked out the projects when they knocked the buildings down in the first place, right? So the impact is significant. And I think it has resulted in these young men being shot and killed and these women being more vulnerable to violence, as well as the expansion of the prisons with Black bodies. I mean, public housing was, aside from a deficient and defective system of, I guess, trying to prevent homelessness, it resulted in more people end up homeless and vulnerable to homeless at the end of the day because all the rules and regulations that is attached with public housing has spit more people out than it housed. But the housing projects still created an opportunity for people to experience a sense of community, right? A sense of responsibility, respect, right? Love.
As a member of the museum's Oral History Collective, Troy has conducted several interviews, including with fellow former residents of the Robert Taylor homes. Hear him go back and forth with Larry Turner during their interview together.
Why this community? What about this particular community that brought out so much light in her, so much power in her? What was going on in this particular community that brought this powerhouse?
You want to know what, bro? Why she selected this community? Remember my first keywords that I said? Poverty. But then I also take it back, a need. Poverty, the need for somebody to care, the need for somebody to make a difference. People getting strung out, people mental health issues, people who was homeless. The need of this community made my mama who she was to be able to step up. God do many things, but at the end of the day, he saw a greater purpose and a need and desire for her to be here, 60609 or Chicago as a whole. Because guess what? She traveled to other cities and different messages in different areas, but she still brought the message. You can make a difference. Don't let your circumstances change who you are. Fight for what you believe in. And guess what? That was homegrown Chicago, 60609.
The following story from Ms. Beauty is excerpt from a 2005 documentary called Dislocation, created by Sundar Venkatesh, a social scientist from Columbia University. Miss Beauty worked with Venkatesh to elevate the stories and challenges that her neighbors at 4525 South Federal faced in the months leading up to the building's demolition in September 2002. The documentary illustrates the gaps and failures in the relocation process for public housing residents.
When I got to Robert Teller's, 2 teenagers came out at the base of the building, a young man and a young woman. The young woman sat on the stoop at the end of the building. I'm just watching them. I got nothing else to do at that time. So I'm watching them and they playing. He kiss her and he run to the parking lot. He kiss her and he ran to the parking lot. Okay? He kissed her one last time and he ran to the parking lot. This time a car pulled up on him, a white car. And as the car pulled up on him, 3 boys got out of the car and they hollered out some gang alphabets and they shot this boy down. You could see this boy dying. Everything stopped and went in slow motion. It started to rain. But I was writing. And as I was writing, I was looking out the window and I was crying. And I was saying in the paper that I was writing, the mother shouldn't be the only one in tears tonight. But everybody in this community should be in tears. Because when she lost somebody, so did we. We never know who this child would have been. You know, he looked like he's no more than about 15 or 16 years old. And as I continued to look out that window and watch this boy die, I called out to my son, you know, and they was looking too. And when they died, they finally came, the ambulance finally came and took them away. But all the while I was writing this piece of paper that says, an ode to slain blacks, okay? And I knew this boy was dead. And as I continued to write, I was saying that everybody in the community should be in tears, not just this mother tonight.
Believe it or not, I think my mom got her energy from a place of pain. My mom dealt with a lot. You had 3 kids, low income, fighting to get up, to be able to do the things you need to do. I didn't know my mom was sick. So that's probably another thing that for her to fall on, because she probably had the Tupac mentality. Time is limited. Let's get this out here where we need to be. But I think her strength came from a place of pain. Got tired of struggling to get food. Tired of trying to reach out and figure out. So I think a lot of her strength came from just being a black woman, dealing with the things that she dealt with on a regular basis, and pain. I think pain is the greatest motivator of anybody to do anything in their life, to move forward. Because when you're hurting, you just want the pain to stop. You want somebody to care. You want somebody to reach out. You want somebody to hold your hand.
You talked about making it to the promised land, knowing you trying to get these people to the promised land, right? But also at the same time knowing that you're not going with them, right?
Yeah.
You talked about her being on her deathbed, her brain,
Shutting down from an aneurysm. Yeah.
but her heart
Still beating.
is still beating. How do you see the impact of your mother's heart still beating, right, on the South Side and all these different communities?
My mom actually passed away at Rush Presbyterian on the West Side. So she went back to her original roots because she was from the West Side originally. The way that I see it, she had a deep, profound love that not even death itself could take away. Her heart still was beating for a reason. They kept it going because guess what? Nobody ever wanted to think that their time is up, but the love that you share is for eternal and forever. And she showed me that. Because without vitals, without brain activity, without any movement, her heart was beating louder than my voice is through this microphone. That's the thing that she gave. God gave her something so much greater that nobody could touch and take away from it. That was her love. Letting you know her love was greater than the body that it was in. So when it came to it, she had deep unity. She had the love that was so profound. If you was to put it in the ground, a tree would probably come up, or a rose, or a flower, or something would be different to actually reach out and make a difference. I had a profound question for my mom whenever she was going to pull through, but God didn't want the question to be asked. I'm going to ask it anyway. What did you see on the other side? Who was there? Who took you over to the promised land? So that lets you know, even with your body shutting down, your heart still going, there must be some kind of guide or some kind of tour guide in the spiritual world that wants you, that take you where you need to go. But he still wants to leave an example or a sign that you love. That's why the heart kept beating. No matter what we did, it kept going. Even when they took off the machine, you can still hear that thing, boom, 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 boom. Nobody want to share their mom with the world. Everybody want their mom to be in the front room wearing her robe or whatever outfit she got, spending time with them. You want them looking over your shoulder, making sure you good. Because in most people's minds, mom don't have a life of her own. Mom belong to us. She don't belong to y'all. But at the end of the day, any human being, if you want them to be free, you want them to be whole, you got to give them room to be able to grow and allow them to have a separate life away from you as well. So I loaned the world my mama because my mom had a purpose. At the end of the day, I still was able, when everybody else couldn't reach her or couldn't do nothing, I could still call my mom and say, hey, mom, you good? And if she was going through something, she would probably talk to you, call you back, or she'd send you an email. Now you're reading the email, helping and working it through it. One time when I told her, I'm like, Mom, I love you, I saw her break down in tears crying. I never knew why she was crying. I said, hey, Mom, why you crying? She say, listen, out of all the years that I done had you as my son, you never told me in words you loved me. I often told her I thought action was the way of showing the person you loved them. She say words make a difference as well, because you know that it touches a person's soul. Words impact people in a way that you never knew that it could be done, but you never know that you hurting, reaching, or touching a person because you don't know how they're going to receive the words that you give it. Or some of the most loving words and some of the most harshest words, but still truthful. I would rather somebody be truthful with me, tell me what's going on in my life, and let me know when I am taking shorts, or if I'm coming directly or I'm coming too harsh and I need to calm down. It was never a day in my life that I would think that I would be without my mom's. I thought that she was immortal, that you would be there forever, moving along, making the distance and actually doing and making a way for us. But whoever knows what's the calling of God. Her moment was to be able to fight for those who pretty much believed that they had a place to stay. I think the way that she got her strength, she had a supportive family and people actually loved and cared about her. Because guess what? Unity is a hard thing to hold on to without equality, without harmony, without justice, without people fighting for what they believe in. Loving and not doing anything about it is a waste of energy. But she actually did something. She created the tour. She stood alongside the people. She was the voice of the voiceless. And even when my mom grieves you, if she was still alive and I would know that she is in this room, she had two words. You knew that it could be a loving words, or you knew that it could be, it's time to put our boots on and do what we need to do. It was, hey, love. And she said it with the most compassionate fight within her. It was, hey, love. You don't know if somebody coming at you saying, hey, love, we finna go over here to this other project, get these people rallied together and fight because the police then went upside somebody's head. You don't know what it is. You just know that your parent or your loved one gave you a confrontation of, hey, love. What will become of tomorrow? We all think about the past and what happened up to this point. What is our future looking like? Not just as black people or just us as the human race. What are we doing to make a difference to be remembered? That's the questions I want. What comes of our memory when individuals no longer say our name? Do we lose value because my name ain't being mentioned in the headlines no more? Or I'm not coming from there? What does our future hold? I pray that each and every one of these individuals who listen to this or who actually going through this, you answer that question in your own sweet, profound way and make this world remember you. Because beauty is remembered. Because she did hers. Now do yours. Be gone, love your mission, and give it all you got.
Oh wow! It looks like the hotline is heating up, so I think we got a caller on the line. So I'm gonna get back to telling you about Beauty Turner and see what our caller has to say. How you doing today?
Yes, good evening. Just listening to your show.
Yes.
And you mentioned a name I've heard quite some time. That was Beauty.
Yes.
I listen, that woman fought so hard for housing. Everyone in housing, the police department down there on 48th, everyone knew Beauty.
Yes.
I mean, she would come in and just, she was a hell of a good lady. But I haven't heard that name quite some time. I'm just glad to hear that you mentioned the woman's name.
Yes. Yes.
And,
It's important that we keep our legacies alive, and I appreciate you calling in because Beauty was a hero to so many people. She was a hero to me, you know, and the people around me and people in public housing.
What neighborhood lives in your heart? What is the history of where you live? How do you fit into it? How have you fought for it? If you want to learn more about Ms. Beauty Turner, you can visit her blog at beautiesghettobustours.blogspot.com. You can also visit NPHM's website at tinyurl.com/BTA overview to learn more about Ms. Beauty Turner and our oral history programs named after her. If you knew Miss Beauty and would like to share your memories, please fill out an online form at tinyurl.com/NPHM interviews. This episode of Out of the Archives was curated, written, and edited by Jellystone Robinson, Liu Chen, and me, Mark Jeschke. The episode was mixed and mastered by Seth Engel. The theme song for Out of the Archives is Born in the Blues, written, performed, and recorded by Keith Hudson, a former Stateway Gardens resident. Out of the Archives is made possible through the generous support of the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Illinois Arts Council Agency, the Kresge Foundation, the Julian Grace Foundation, Good Chaos, and the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. We'd like to give one last huge thanks to our oral history narrators, Larry Turner, Troy Gaston, Betty Thompson, Richard Morgan, and Patricia Porter, as well as our oral historians, Troy Gaston, Liu Chen, Leah Love, Ashley Jefferson, Shakira Johnson, and Sophia Gallo. We'd also like to extend a huge shout out and thank you to the memory workers who have documented Ms. Beauty's work prior to us. Flavian Prince, Daniel Rudin, Sharonda Kimball, and all the other students who worked on the Interrupt the Pipeline documentary, Nuri Medina II and the Inglewood Enterprise Gallery Show, and Sundhir Venkatesh. If any of you are listening, we'd love to hear about your memories of Miss Beauty. For this episode, we've added a poll and opened the comment section for feedback. We're looking to you, the listener, to help us create a podcast that brings these stories to you in an accessible, educational, and entertaining way. We look forward to reading and learning about your preferences for our podcast and are eager to continue to improve upon our work. To hear the full interviews featured in this episode, including those of Larry Turner and Troy Gaston, visit our public oral history archive at nphm.org/listen. There you can also find more episodes of Out of the Archives or search NPHM wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about the displacement, development, and resistance discussed in this episode, check out the sources listed in the episode notes, including our zine series, When the Market Isn't an Option, which details the rise and defunding of public housing. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to sharing more stories with you all very soon.
One more thing.
Yeah.
If you have any future questions or anything that need to be known about Beauty, I'm always available because I love her. And guess what? And since she loved y'all, I guess I must love you too. All right.